Hello students, welcome to this new class, this new video on gravitation. So in our journey so far, we have talked about and discussed the ideas of dimensional analysis, vectors, about the general ideas of the mathematics that we use in physics and also motion in 1 and 2 dimensions. Today we shall be studying this fascinating chapter on gravitation. It's an important chapter for your class 11, at the same time it's pretty interesting chapter. When I was a student in class 11, gravitation used to be the most favorite chapter of mine. Now you have some basic ideas about gravitation, about those formulas like G m1 m2 by r squared. But in this course, in class 11, you shall be studying gravitation in even more details about ideas of gravitational potential, then how do rockets escape the gravity of Earth, how do planets and satellites move around the Sun and the Earth respectively, and so on. So let us start it. Now what do we know basically about gravitation? We all have heard these stories, like one day Newton was sitting outside under an apple tree when an apple happened to fall upon his head, and he pondered that why did the apple come down towards the ground and why did it not go up towards the air. And it is from this thought of his that he ultimately formulated the law of gravitation. We are familiar with this idea. Now while no one knows for sure that if indeed the apple fell upon Newton's head, it's sure that the apple might have fallen somewhere, maybe along his vision, and then he asked this question. And what was that final formula that he formulated, which we now know as the force of gravitation? He said that the force of gravitation between any two bodies which have masses m1 and m2, he said that this force of gravitation, the force of attraction between the masses, is directly proportional to the product of the masses, and also at the same time this force of attraction is inversely proportional to the square of the separation distance between the two masses. So if I have got two masses which have got mass m1 and m2, the gravitational force is proportional to their product directly, and at the same time it's inversely proportional to the square of their separation distance. So if you look into it, dimensionally the force is proportional to dimension of mass squared, and it is proportional inversely to dimension of length squared. Combining this together, force is proportional to m1 m2 by r squared. That brings us to this familiar form that the force of gravitation is equal to capital G into m1 m2 by r square, where capital G is the constant of proportionality. This capital G, as we now know, it is called the universal gravitational constant, and it has a magnitude of 6.67 into 10 to the power minus 11. We will be coming into the units shortly. So this is the magnitude of the universal gravitational constant, and this is the formula for the force of gravitation as we know it. So what does the statement of the law of gravitation say? So according to the principle of gravitation, the force of attraction between any two bodies or any two particles is directly proportional to the product of their masses and inversely proportional to the square of their separation distance. Now what will be the unit of this G? Well, if I make G to be the subject, then G becomes F r square by m1 m2. So F is measured in Newton force, r squared, so that's meter squared, divided by mass squared, so per kg square. So the value of G is 6.67 in 10 to the power minus 11, unit is Newton meter square per kg square. So this is the value of the universal gravitational constant. If m1 comma m2 is equal to 1 kg, and if the distance is equal to 1 meter, then F is equal to G. So one can also say that the universal gravitational constant is the force of attraction between two bodies of mass 1 kilogram placed 1 meter apart. So you can understand that the force of gravitation is a pretty weak force. So two masses, each of which have got a mass of 1 kilogram, when they are placed 1 meter apart. So if I have two masses of 1 kilogram placed 1 meter apart, the force of attraction between them will be only 6.67 into 10 to the power minus 11 Newton. So that's a feeble amount of force, pretty weak force. Gravitational force is a weak force. How weak? Let us do a comparison. So let me take two electrons. So I consider two electrons and say the electrons are placed a distance r apart. What is the value of r? It doesn't matter. Say some distance r apart. Now it is known to us that the mass of an electron is 9.1 into 10 to the power minus 31 kilograms, and that the charge of an electron is equal to 1.6 into 10 to the power minus 19 coulombs. So these are two values which you already know. Now let me find out the gravitational force of attraction and also the electrostatic force. What will be the gravitational force? F gravity. That will be g times mass of both the electrons divided by the distance squared. So this is equal to 6.67 into 10 to the power minus 11. That's the value of g into mass of electron, that's 9.1 into 10 to the power minus 31 squared divided by r squared. What does this turn out to be? Well, let us calculate. So it turns out to be 6.67 into 10 to the power minus 11 into 9.1 The value is 5.52 into 10 to the power minus 71 by r square newtons. Now I am also going to find out what is the force electrostatic. Force electrostatic follows this formula: 1 by 4 pi epsilon naught q1 q2 by r square. So if there are two charges q1 and q2, the force of attraction or repulsion between the charges is equal to 1 by 4 pi epsilon naught q1 q2 by r square, where r is the separation distance between the two charges and epsilon naught is called the permittivity of free space. Now epsilon naught has a value of 8.85 into 10 to the power minus 12. Therefore this entire quantity 1 by 4 pi epsilon naught, if you evaluate it, it has a value of 9 into 10 to the power 9. And then what's the charge? Charge is 1.6 into 10 to the power minus 19 coulomb. That will be squared divided by r squared. Let us calculate this. It turns out to be 2.3 into 10 to the power minus 28 divided by r square newtons. Now what we will do is we will take a ratio of these two. So we shall now calculate this ratio of force gravity by force electrostatic. So that is equal to 5.52 into 10 to the power minus 71 divided by 2.3 into 10 to the power minus 28. Obviously these r squares, they get cancelled. And if you calculate this ratio, 5.52 divided by 2.3, that's around 12.6 into minus 71 divided by 10 to the power minus 43. So from here you can get an idea that force gravity by force electrostatic is almost equal to 10 to the power minus 44. That means the gravitational force of attraction between two electrons is 10 to the power minus 44 times that of the electrostatic force of repulsion. Or in other words, the force of gravity is 10 to the power 44 times weaker than the electrostatic force. So you can imagine how weak this force of gravity is. But obviously when we talk about large bodies like planets or galaxies black holes which have got incredibly high masses. Here the mass is extremely small, of the order of 10 to the power minus 31. But when we talk about incredibly big amount of masses, then the gravitational force becomes dominant force. Now there are certain characteristics of this gravitational force. One of the characteristics being that the gravitational force is an attractive force. Like electrostatic force, which we recently found out the ratio to, electrostatic force, as you know, can be attractive as well as repulsive. If we have got like charges, it's repulsive. If it is unlike charges, it's attractive. But gravitational forces are always attractive in nature. So which gives us an idea that charges are of two types, but mass, that's always of one type. The second characteristic of gravitational force is that it is a inverse square force, which means the force rapidly decreases with the square of the distance of separation. The third characteristic is that the gravitational force always acts along the line which is joining the center of mass of the two bodies. So if I consider any two bodies, say this body here and this body here, and these are their center of masses, gravitational force will always act along this line joining the center of masses. It will not act along a curve like this or some path like this. It will always act along the line joining the center of masses. This is why it is also called a central force. Finally, gravitational force, as I said, it's always attractive. It's a central force. It follows the inverse square law, and gravitational force, well, there is another characteristic of gravitational force, and which is that when we take small distances like say subatomic particles or so, it is not quite the dominant force out there. They are in that domain, the electrostatic forces, they overcome. But if we talk about the large scale distances like planets or distances of light years and parsecs, in those distances, in those scales, gravitational force is the most dominant force. When Newton originally talked about his idea about the law of gravitation, what he said is that his law of gravitation will only be valid for that of point masses. So what do we mean by point masses? Point masses mean that extremely small dimensions, like small dots, which have got almost no length, breadth and height, but the entire mass of the body is concentrated at that dot, as if it has got an infinite density. So these are what point masses is. And when Newton said that the force of attraction is proportional to the product of masses and inversely varies as the distance of separation, he actually said about those point masses. But then, as we see, that almost all the masses, all the bodies around us, they are extended. If we talk about the force of attraction between, say, the Earth and the Moon, say this is the Moon and this is the Earth. Quite obviously, Earth and Moon are not point masses. They have got certain radii and diameters, so they are extended masses. Then why is the Newton's law of gravity valid in this case? Well, the reason is our Earth and Moon, they are spherically symmetric bodies. These bodies are spherically symmetric, which means the distribution of mass is uniform on an average. So if you are here at the center of the Earth and you travel towards the surface along any radius, radially, obviously this is a 2D figure, sphere is a 3-dimensional figure, so you can also travel like this outward. So whenever you travel radially, you will find that the density of the Earth, rho, that's more or less constant, the average density. So the mass is uniformly distributed. Same for Moon. So whenever we have got these spherically symmetric bodies, we can assume that the entire mass is as if concentrated at its center of mass. So the mass of Earth, which we know is 6 into 10 to the power 24 kilograms, we can assume that this entire mass is not distributed over the entire volume of the Earth, but as if this entire mass is concentrated in the small dot which we call the center of mass of the Earth, and same for Moon. And then the force of attraction that will be acting between Earth and Moon, the force of attraction will be along the line joining the center of masses of these two bodies. And this is what happens for all the cases. Like if this is an Earth and you are a human being standing on the surface of Earth here, and this is the center of Earth, the law of gravitation acts like this, that entire mass of Earth is concentrated at its center of mass, and your entire mass is concentrated at your center of mass, and the gravity acts only along these two center of masses. So whenever we talk about gravity in classical mechanics, we will always assume that the mass is concentrated at a certain small point, which is the center of mass for the body, for the system, and that the force of gravity is acting along the line which is joining those two center of masses. So suppose there is a mass m1 here, and suppose there is a mass m2 here, and that the distance of separation between mass m1 and mass m2 is r. So the force which is acting on m1 due to m2, force on m1 due to m2 is represented like this: force on body 1 due to body 2. It's a vector. So on 1 due to 2 is like this, along this direction, along the line joining the center of masses on 1 due to 2. Similarly, the force on mass 2 due to m1 will be force on 2 due to 1. So that will be along this direction, force on 2 due to 1, and this is force on 1 due to 2. On 1 due to 2, on 2 due to 1. The arrowheads give you an idea. So 2 is getting attracted by 1 along this direction, 1 is getting attracted by 2 along this direction. And the radius vector, or the distance vector between these 2 points, can be assumed like this, that from 1 to 2, the one pointing is say r from 1 to 2. This is a unit vector from 1 to 2. Similarly, from 2 to 1, we have another unit vector r cap 2. Then the force of gravity acting on 1 due to 2, this is how you read it, okay? The first variable is the body on which the force is acting, the second variable is the body which is exerting the force. So force on 1 due to 2 is equal to g, the product of the two masses by distance square, times the radius vector will be from 2 to 1, this unit vector here. Now since this unit vector and this force, they are opposite to each other, r21 and f12 are in opposite directions, I will use a negative sign here. Similarly, f12 due to 1 will be gm1 m2 by r squared, unit vector r12 and f21, r12 f21 opposite to each other, so negative sign. If you take the modulus of these two vectors, that is if you only calculate the magnitude, you shall find out that f of 12 vectors magnitude is exactly equal to f of 21 vectors magnitude. But if you are about to write it down vectorially, you have to write it that f12 is equal to minus f21, which means that yeah, their magnitudes are equal but their directions are opposite to each other. So this also means that the gravitational force of attraction between two masses follows the Newton's third law of action-reaction pair. So if you say that F12 is the action, then F21 is the reaction, or if you want to consider F21 as the action, then F12 is the reaction. They follow the Newton's third law of the action-reaction pair. Another interesting thing about this gravitational force is that it is independent of the presence of other masses along the path. So what do I mean by that, independent of presence? say I have a body here m1 and I have a body here m2, and say the force is acting along the line joining their centers. Say this force is F12. If I bring a third body here m3, obviously there will be force of attraction between 1 and 3 and between 2 and 3. There is no denying that. But this force F12, which is the force between 1 and 2, this will be unaffected by m3. m3 will exert different forces which you may call F13 or F23. That's different. But this mass is not going to affect in any manner this force here. So the force of attraction between any two masses is always independent of the presence of other masses around it. That mass may exert a different force, but it is not going to change this force. Finally, another thing about gravitation is, like, if there are two masses here and they are attracted to each other, it does not depend upon what is the medium in between the two masses. If this region is vacuum, the force of gravity will be the same if this region is filled with water or this region is filled with air. So the presence of a medium does not affect the force of gravity. Had this been electrostatic forces and had this been two charges Q1, Q2, the presence of that particular dielectric medium, in electrostatics it is called dielectric medium, would have affected what will be the force of electrostatic attraction. So that is another key point of difference between gravitational force and electrostatic force. In electrostatic force, the medium between the two charges determines what will be the force of attraction or repulsion. But in gravitation, whatever be the medium between the two masses, force of gravity remains unaffected.